Good afternoon. My name is Boniface Dulani, and I'm a lecturer at the University of Malawi in the Department of Political and Administrative Studies. I wanted to share with you this afternoon about the protest movements that we've recently seen on the African continent. Of course, the protests are not a new phenomenon in African politics. During, I think, the independence struggles of the 1950s and 1960s, quite a lot of African citizens really went on the streets to protest against colonialism. In the 1990s as well, we saw the return of protests, especially after several decades of authoritarian rule, and the protest movements reemerged later to fight for democratization on the continent. Since I think the democratic transitions of the 1990s, a lot of the constitutions on the continent have accommodated, I think, demonstrations and protests as a constitutional right. So we've actually seen quite a number of demonstrations and protests, especially when the avenues for holding those in power accountable have been seen to be failing. So a good example have been the protests against the presidents that have wanted it to cling on to power against term limits, or indeed in cases where they've lost elections. In Burkina Faso, for example, we know former President Blaise Compaoré in 2014 wanted to change the national constitution so that he could seek a third term in office. And the Burkinabe citizens actually went on the streets to protest, and this forced President Compaoré not only out of power, but he also abandoned his ambitions to change the national constitution. We've also seen similar demonstrations in the Democratic Republic of Congo, in Burundi, and a few other countries where presidents have really tried to change their national constitutions. But demonstrations we've also seen in recent years, demonstrations emerging, I think, as a strategy for ordinary citizens to protest the abuse of power by political leaders. So in Malawi, for instance, last week, citizens really went on the streets to demonstrate against some more legal reforms that were viewed as being anti-democratic. In Madagascar too, again last week, citizens went on the streets to protest against, I think, the enactment of laws that were seen to be targeting certain individuals so that they could not contest for office. So by and large, I think the constitutional setups have allowed demonstrations, but they've had mixed results. So while in Burkina Faso, the demonstrations helped to preserve the constitutional order and the term limits, in Burundi, I think these demonstrations were not successful. Indeed, just last week, we also know that in Tanzania, there were calls for demonstrations, but these were met with a word of warning from the police authorities that said if anyone went on the streets to demonstrate, they would be beaten up like dogs. And as a result, I think no one really dared to show up on the streets. So by and large, I think there's a mixed bag, but overall, I would think that the trajectory is one that is positive, and especially when the institutions of the state are failing to deliver, then we are increasingly seeing citizens taking to the streets and using this constitutional right to challenge those in authority and in positions of power.